Hello everybody and welcome back. I have a different type of video to share with you guys. I recently took a trip with my truck and I had to pick up a car and tow it back, and it's the first time I've towed anything with my 2018 Ford F-150, and I was a little concerned not knowing how good or how bad it would be, and I thought I'd just give a quick video to share my experiences. Generally, in a nutshell, it was very good. So to get right to the punchline, this is just a chart that's showing you my MPG, and you can see my cursor up here. This line up here is 20 miles per gallon, and all of these tanks were before I was towing. I was doing better than 20 miles per gallon, and these three tanks were the leg of the return trip where I was towing the Corolla. You can see they're south of 20 miles per gallon, probably about 20% fuel economy hit. So I'm not really sure why this tank here is so low. There's a chance on this tank maybe I didn't put in as much fuel as I should have, so maybe this might have been a little lower had I filled it properly, and this would have been a little bit higher. That's one theory. Well, anyway, we'll describe more as we go. For those of you that are still with me, I appreciate it. I'll give a few more details. As I've said before, my truck, it's a Super Crew 4-wheel drive. It's the Lariat, and the Lariat has the towing package. So I think it has a transmission cooler built in with the towing package, and perhaps a few other things are a little more heavy duty than on the vehicles that don't have the towing package. And the engine I have, it's a small V6, the 2.7 liter, mated to the 10-speed transmission, and the engine is turbocharged. And there's nothing unusual or special about the tires, or the rest of the truck for that matter. This map basically gives you an idea of the whole trip. It started up here in New England, in the greater Boston area, and we drove down. This is Interstate 81 here, and on the way down we cut this way down to Georgia. The next day I went down to Pensacola. The day after that I went back to Georgia. A couple days later I went up to this area of North Carolina, and this is where we picked up the Corolla. We took a state highway back up to 81 and drove on the long ride back to the Boston area. Total trip was around 3,000 miles, and it took about 10 days. The day after we returned, I had to return the dolly to the rental place, and I gassed up shortly thereafter to close out the trip and get some final statistics and numbers. And back to this is the same chart, just to add a little more detail. So these numbers down here are the number of days into the trip. So on day one, I've got 1.25 here, but these two were the first day. I got 2 tanks of gas. This one was in New Jersey. This one I think was in South Carolina area or North Carolina. The next day, I got another tank of gas. On day 3, another tank. I skipped day 4. On 5, I got another tank. Skipped day 6. On day 7, I got 2 tanks. Then day 8, I got a tank. And I closed it out on day 9. Again, this was the day I returned the dolly. This was the day we returned at the end of the trip. So for the environment, almost all interstates, the interstates were designed in the 50s and 60s and built in the 50s to allow cars to travel 70 miles per hour, and those were automobiles of the 1970s era. So for interstates, the turns and the slopes are relatively gentle. There's no lights on them. State highways are similar to interstates, but to a lesser degree. State highways can have slightly steeper grades and steeper turns. I think on an interstate, the grades are limited to like 3% or 4%, and on state highways that can be as high as maybe 4 or 5. I think I even saw 7% on a road, although I'm not sure it was a state highway. For the weather, it was clear and dry. No precipitation worth mentioning. Cold, it was in the winter, so at or near freezing typically in the mornings, a little warmer obviously as you go further south. In the afternoons, obviously warmer than the mornings. And for the miles per gallon that I'm discussing here, these are calculations that I make based on the miles and what I pump at the gas pump. Ford gives you a miles per gallon number, and I find that Ford seems to overestimate what you get for fuel economy by about 1 mile per gallon. And I just buy generic gasoline, 87 octane. It almost all has 10% ethanol, and I buy gas where it's convenient. And I do believe I got a tank of gas in Alabama that may have been ethanol free. I think it said that on the pump, so that was kind of cool. And overall, the performance, it was great. The Corolla, I looked it up, weighs around 2,800 pounds. We had 2 people and other luggage that we were transporting that had to be maybe a few hundred pounds. And then there was the weight of the dolly. I don't know how heavy it is, but the thing's got to be at least 200 pounds. So we were probably dragging around close to 2 tons on top of that, of the vehicle. As I got used to it, I was very gentle when I started towing, not sure what to expect. But my confidence grew, and there were several times you'd be following a tractor trailer and you'd approach going up a grade, and of course the tractor trailer would slow down and I would move into the passing lane and accelerate to pass the truck. So I'd be able to accelerate from maybe 57 miles per hour up to 65 or so. And I wasn't trying to accelerate like a rocket, but you'd give it more gas, and a second or so later you'd feel the engine start to accelerate away, and you'd see your speedometer climb a mile per hour or so every second or so. And there were times I had forgotten that I was actually towing a car behind me, and I'd look in the rearview mirror and I'd see the car there, and it would kind of catch me off guard. But it performed very well, and I was very happy with it. So overall, I was very pleased with how the truck behaved from an acceleration, braking, and handling point of view. And that's all I have. So I appreciate you coming by. I wish you well, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next one.